Good evening, Tampa Bay. This is the Rockit Man Show, and we're ready to go. We're hoping to see the 60 country will actually be more than a memory. Let's go. We have a very special co-host tonight, Kurt Wadsworth. Say hello, Kurt.
Hello, everybody.
So how you been, Kurt? I haven't seen you in a while.
Pretty good. Staying busy.
Yeah, same here. I just got a settlement from one of my attorneys, Morgan and Morgan.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I thought it was going to take several years. It only took about a year and a half.
Well, that ain't bad.
Yeah.
Spend the money wisely. You don't last.
I have. I'm investing it into my boat, and my bike, and my boat's going to be probably in the Chesco Boat Parade. Oh,
that's right. Chasco's coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, the Chasco Parade. Now, my band Stingray was supposed to be in that, but they may not be. So I may. I'm probably going to be entertaining the fact that other bands want to take up that spot. See, it's too late for anybody to get into on the entry of that. And they also have to pay money to do all of this in two categories, nonprofit and profit.
Yeah, I used to play the gig down at Julie's at the very end of it, where everybody went to party afterwards. I did that for several years. So.
Yeah, that seems to be the party place to go to right after.
That was a coveted gig to get after, during a parade or whatever. So
I was in it last year actually, and I was in the last float. Okay. I couldn't have requested that. I would have probably requested that anyways. You know how people remember the first and last thing that they do?
Yeah.
That's I think everybody remembers of me from last time. I would throw out some of them little beads, and they'd be going like, "No, go throw those big beads out!" And I'd swing them around and tease the hell out of everybody, and just go on. It's a lot of fun, especially in front of thousands like that.
Yeah, it is.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to do it this next. I'm going to probably have my boat in the parade too. My speedboat. Okay. That's going to be a lot of fun. Cool. I'm not sure if I should tow the jet ski with that.
Nah.
Make a little train
sit on
with
jet ski for that long.
Don't think I could stay on the jet ski in that water and going that slow, because it's a stand up. The ones that go dive underwater. So. Yep. Oh yeah, they're a lot of fun. If I ever got pressed for wanting to for money or something, I could sell it now, right now. People will offer me all day long like $600, but there are others that will offer me like a place called the Jet Ski Store, who sees a value in the stand-up because it's not being produced anymore. That they really want it. I'm probably going to entertain that idea of selling it to them for a G. Get 1,000 out of it. Runs great.
Might be using it.
Yeah, I might be using it sometime in the future. In the past, people have said, "Why are you looking at your phone while you're doing your program?" Well, sometimes sometimes I use it as a notepad because it helps me with what's going on, what I have on the menu here today. A lot of times I just do this program on the fly, and I've been doing it for over 2.5 years now.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the first people that were here.
In that postage stamp room, remember that?
Yep, Holy! I've set that room up. I remember it well.
Oh, wow, that was something else. And my
first band, one engineer, if you're lucky.
My first band was called Circle Sky. You ever heard of them?
Yeah, I know Circle Sky.
Yeah.
Mark, all those guys. I've known them for years.
I know them all. I jam with them at the Boulevard Lounge on Wednesday nights. I'm probably going to be bringing my keyboards up there this weekend, playing some Rush, Van Halen. I'm looking at doing some other things, like Roll with the Changes. Da-da-da. Yeah, I love that. And that's a really involving song when it comes.
What keyboard are you bringing up?
Yamaha.
Which one?
The PSR 500. It's got the sounds that sounds just like Rush and Van Halen. And that's one of the things I like about it. I also do a song called Dirty Laundry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a number of songs. I'm starting to even get into a band called Evanescence.
I used to play that Bring to Life. So it has a bunch of keyboard parts. I had to put them down to 2 hands, and they used to say, "Oh, you play all the parts," because I don't have more than 2 hands.
Well, I've been able to do both parts. You know, there's the
like
bottom
4
part
different
that's like the guitar part. It stays at a constant. It seems
I
like.
usually have, he plays 4 different parts on that. I had the music for it, and I had to condense them all down, and it took me a while to get it down. But it sounded really good because I played it on my Triton Studio, so I was able to do that. You know, I prefer that over my Phantom, but
you
the
work
Phantom's
with
a lot
recording
lighter.
programs, though, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Like Pro Tools.
No, Pro Tools is the one I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's the one I don't use. I use a lot of the other ones and have. I'm a Logic guy for Macs, and I'm still learning on the Mac. So.
Well, I used to work with Cool Edit.
Remember Cool Edit Pro?
And I got to see what one I've never heard of before till recently. Fruit Loops.
Fruity Loops.
Yeah.
I use Master Tracks Pro for the
look at that! Chris is cringing on Fruity Loops. He don't like that one.
Pro Tool guy.
What's up with that, sir, Chris?
I use a real DAW.
That's why I like Logic, but they went away from the PCs to the Macs, and I didn't use the Macs, and I was with Sonar forever. You know, for Project Studio at home, it works great. You know, every problem I did a lot of recording with it. Problem with drivers, and always it's a mess. Supposedly with the Macs are better. Now they got this new Mac computer out. It's really badass. You seen those? Little round canister looking things.
Oh, the new Mac Pros.
Oh yeah, those are amazing. Absolutely amazing units.
I hadn't had a chance to play with one yet, but I heard they're pretty damp.
They're pretty cool. You can take it up underneath your arm, and walk off with it. You know, you need as a monitor, and you're out running, so you can go do live and all kinds of production with it. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Always trying to keep up with those drivers though. I just set my studio back up after having it down for like 4 months.
Can you explain to my Deanna that's at home how to get on to the live stream here?
Go to www.talkwadstudios.com/The Rocket Man Show.
There you go. I've got to step out and get something special out of my car. So if you could talk to the people for a minute.
I don't know what to talk about.
We're going to talk about
So you're going to have some Deanna Nichols, I guess, on as a guest. Now, Deanna, if you're listening out there, looking forward to talking to you. I haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're still Floydsome. And tell Jim I said hi, especially him, one of my favorite guys out in the music land, especially up there in Newport Richey. One of the guys I always thought supported every band that was around. You know, never get enough credit for that. You know, he's always my favorite guy. I used to be in a band with him many years ago, and really did enjoy playing with him. He was just a great guy to have in a band.
I forgot this completely.
No, what you got there?
Talking about that tape.
Yeah.
This is it.
I don't miss that stuff.
This is something kind of rare.
Somebody actually told me I talked to recently said they, I can see it's kind of like hanging around a while.
Yeah, well, it's
somebody's hair from the 60s.
I've been trying to keep it in a cool place. This is the original box for it. This is a 2-inch recording master tape that was recorded in Nashville.
So 2 inches is probably a 24 track.
It looks like box is sold. It looks like it was around at the Last Supper.
I think it was from the 1940s. I'm not 100% though. Yeah. So.
I miss that stuff. Do you even know what's on it?
Huh?
Do you even know what's on it?
No clue.
Probably don't work.
Well, if it works and it's got a famous person on it, I'd be able to cash in on it.
Wow.
Look at this. Look at this tape, all of you out there. If this is something that you'll rarely see anymore, there's a tape like this. This sucker's heavy. Try putting all. You can have everything like. What is that? About 10, 15?
Turn it 90 degrees.
You mean like this?
Oh, that's done by Scotch, and Scotch stopped making tapes long time ago.
Well, how long ago was that?
80s.
Was it like early 80s, like 83?
Yeah.
So you think they stopped making this kind of tape?
Well,
all tape period. I
yeah.
think.
Well, no, they're still manufacturers for tape because they're still
But
actually
not audio.
Well, in audio, yes.
Do they?
It's just Scotch doesn't no longer makes it, but there's still a demand for analog tape. It's just not. It's only done in like major studios. They can afford to, because I know for 15 minutes of 2-inch tape generally is going to run you about $400 to $500, and that's
for something like this.
something like that. That's just blank tape.
A blank tape, but this has got something recorded on it.
How do
And
you
I
know?
have no clue of what's on it. It could be Dean Martin's lost tapes, or it could be anybody. But the one thing that sets up the red flags for me, it's recorded in Nashville. It could have been recorded anywhere else. I mean, every state in the union, they had a way to record these. But when I say Nashville, that means that there's a very good possibility that somebody famous may have recorded onto this.
There's
You know how much I
There's a
paid?
date on that tape?
It's hard to say.
Flip it around. There's a label on the side of it here. No. Flip it over.
I didn't know when they started. When did they start
Okay,
actually using
here's
that?
some numbers right there.
I don't know if that's been.
There.
Should have
Go
a
ahead and
date on
take
it.
on hold of that. This is something very rare to see these days, and you know what? I found it at the flea market, and I paid $7 for it.
Now, are you sure that that's actually the original box that it might have come?
That is the original box. It's the original. This is a master tape. This thing is what 15 pounds?
Pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy, and it's got to have something on it. I've kept it at a nice, cool place. I learned not to take tape like this for granted because one of my favorite rock artists did take the head for granted. That would be Tom Schultz. He had remember the song Amanda?
Yep.
He had that recording amongst all the other ones for the next album at the time on that tape, and it all kind of stuck together and melted and stuff like that, and he had to redo all of it.
I do know of some people who have been able to take tapes like that I might have gotten a little too hot. They'll put them in a dehydrator like you would see on those infomercials.
Right.
And sometimes that can save it, but
I don't miss it. I used to have to work with tape before they had other media. I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, my brother-in-law, whose father worked with Burroughs. Master
tape has
And,
numbers on it. I was trying to.
I told him one day they're going to put it on a hard drive, and he said, "And you'll never be able to get music on a hard drive." Well, I'm sure you get a lot on there now.
I was thinking that because it says it's a master tape, that it's got to have something on it.
It's just number 399. Who knows?
I tried to look up those numbers and stuff.
Back in those days, they used to record almost anything and everything, and you never knew what was on there.
It could be,
Tape was cheap; it wasn't that expensive.
back
The
then.
recorders were. I remember the first 4-track recorder came out of Tampa. I remember Stephen Stills went down and used it, and down at Maurice Stereo, I think is the name of the place on Kennedy. They had the first 4-track in town. And that was, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s or something.
I still have like a cassette 4-track.
Yeah, I still have a lot of those myself. Yeah.
I also have a half-inch tape that's 20-track.
The problem with the tape, though, it breaks down, after so
Yeah,
long.
that's
All
the only
media,
thing.
all media breaks down. They're wondering how long CDs are going to actually last. I guess they're lasting longer than they thought they would.
As long as they don't, if people don't use them like frisbees, like they did in the
No,
from
actually,
the
no.
start.
It degrades. Everything degrades at some point, and
Oh yeah, everything will degrade.
tape's worse because it actually dries out and changes, and then the magnetic particles fall off because that's all it is. When
Right.
you're optically burning something, you're actually changing, but still the same thing. The material itself degrades. So
well,
there's really
essentially,
no purple media.
all a tape is really is it's just like your regular like adhesive tape with rust on it, and that rust has a magnetic quality to it, and when it passes over a recording head, it has a magnetic field on it, and it basically writes the information via magnet onto that rust, essentially.
Yeah, I used to use them, and I had a Mellotron once, and which which was a real nightmare because you had a piece of tape, almost, I think it was 1 inch. I forget how. I think it wasn't that big, but you had to lift up the top, and it was really heavy. And you had to run it through all the little channels in there, and it would go around. It was a total nightmare of a thing to have. People want them all the time, and I said, man, I like the fact I can go to my Triton and push a button, and I got a Mellotron. I don't want to have to go through carrying a whole big heavy thing around, And then the Echoplexes, which really were really good units, and they still sound good if you can get one, but now the price on them is 5 or 6 times more than what they used to cost. But they're still run off tapes. But you're always having to clean the heads and demagnetize the heads,
and you got to calibrate it.
What's that?
And you have to calibrate it, especially.
Well, not for an Echoplex. You didn't calibrate.
Well, but for something like that, for like a 24 track. Oh, yeah. I mean, if those heads were not perfectly aligned,
you got bleed through.
You get bleed through. You get the drums might be ahead of the guitarist. It's a whole.
The thing I hated was cutting the tape and having to splice.
Oh,
tape.
Splicing sucks.
I've had to do that. Splicing before.
I don't miss that at all. I like the fact you can just hit a button and rewind now with all the modern stuff. People say, oh, it sounds better on tape and it sounds this. And, I've gone out and taken microphones and done tests with people. And 99.99% of the people couldn't tell you the difference. One way or another.
The majority of people won't know the difference. But people like in our industry, we can hear a difference.
Some people, sometimes you can. Sometimes you really can't tell the difference. The digital, so you're really listening for it because it's going to end up digital anyway.
Eventually, yes.
So what's the point? I mean, if you're trying to go out and you do all that extra stuff to do this, you're going to put it on a CD, which is going to be limited anyway. You know? And it really does. The only time I can ever tell the difference between analog and digital is in a band.
Yeah.
I got one of my favorite amps is a Line 6 Axe 2. I have 2 of them. I use them in acoustic duos. But if I go up and play with really heavy drums, live drums, and a big bass amp, like I have an SVT bass amp, and if I go and I play up with that, it just swallows the sound up, and people don't understand why. Because it's an on-off thing when it's digital, when it's solid-state amps. But when it's analog and you're actually running through a tube, you got a continuous tone all the time. So what happens is it has to make the other one sound very, very thin because the lowest harmonic always dominates.
Right.
Well, there's one thing that hasn't lost its luster over all of these years, and that's vinyl. Vinyl is still being produced today. On even the newest releases. I just saw a new release from Taylor Swift on vinyl.
Yeah.
You know that some of the record players can be as much as $5,000?
I know. I fix it up. So I have 3,800 albums. Trust me, I know. I've been an album collector since I was a kid in the 60s, and I got some really cool, especially the old Genesis albums. They all open up and they had pages. I had the original Genesis albums, and I have a lot of collectors like that.
Well, I've been looking online to check out the values of some albums. Mm-hmm. Some of them from the 60s on up to the 80s and stuff like that can be as much as $2,000 in worth.
Well, I probably got some money sitting around then. Because I know I got some really rare ones. Yeah, I got a lot of very rare albums. I only knew a couple of people who had more albums than I did. And one guy he used to work at Bananas Records, Clearwater. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had a whole house. His whole house was nothing but albums. I mean, it was amazing. But, I got quite a few of them. I cover that wall easily, Yeah, no, but that's some really cool ones in there. It was some that I looked for years, on CDs or other things and couldn't find the sound, and I still have them on albums, There's one recording I've been looking for forever. It's made in 69 or 70. I think it was by a guy named Jerry Broughton. It was called The Sinking of the Titanic. And it was an acoustic song, and I heard it on the radio, and then I got a copy of the tape of it, and I played it for years in bars. Can still remember a lot of the lines in it. It's about a guy that he used to work in Mexico down in a rope factory, and down in Mexico they were making rope out of hemp. So the factory caught on fire one day, and he ran back on in to save his lunch. He had 2 sardine sandwiches in there, and went on back in to save his lunch, and the factory was burning down, and he just sat down in the middle of the fire, and he said, "Shit, I ain't gonna make rope no more." So he went on and got on the Titanic. So he brought it on, comes walking up to get on the Titanic, and he's the captain's at the top of the Titanic. So what you got there? So I got me my BBDs. He got me my, bunch of other stuff that he was bringing on. He got me 296 feet of rope. And he says, "What you got that for?" And he says, "Oh, I'll just carry it." So he goes on and he's smoking it, turns the captain on. Captain takes a big tote, holds it in, and he wrecks the Titanic into a iceberg. And that's a true story how the Titanic sank. Wasn't for that guy smoking pot on there, it'd probably never gone down.
There was somebody smoking pot on the Titanic?
That's what that rope was. He didn't go back in to save them sardine sandwiches for nothing.
You got the munchies.
I tried to find that song. It's the only song I have never been able to find. I asked, actually, about 2 or 3 months ago, I was talking to somebody who actually remembered the song, and I sang some of the words for it. And I remember do it. I had it for the longest time, and I don't know what the hell happened to it.
And what's the name of the album?
I don't know the name of the album. All I know is the artist. I'm pretty sure it was Jeremy Broughton, and I remember the song was "The Sinking of the Titanic." I have looked all over the internet, can't find it.
You know that
or the artist.
I go up to the flea market and I can see all kinds of albums that are being offered by some, and they sell them for like 50 cents to $1 or so.
Right.
That there's a very good possibility somebody could run across one that's worth thousands. I mean the very first original Led Zeppelin album. If you could find it in the shrink wrap, I've heard it's worth $100,000.
Really? That's hard to believe, but I mean, I got a lot of albums like that I never took out because I would get them as cutouts or extras, and I'd save them because they were some of my favorite albums, which are rare. My taste in music too is different than most people. I'm not a big Beatles fan. God, everybody probably hate me now, but they bore me, and so I was mostly into progressive rock, and the bands I was listening to were the Zombies and PFM and a lot of bands that people didn't know about then, and the bands I listen to today the same way. I guess I've been a musician all my life, and I hear music differently, I guess, than most people. So
how long have you been playing music?
Since I was 5.
Since you were 5 years old? I wish I could say that.
I
actually started in junior high. To get out of music theory, they put me on the standing bass.
I started playing keyboards first, and then by the time I was like 9, I was messing with the guitar a little bit, and I was playing trombone from the time I was 7. So by the time I was in junior high, I pretty much played all brass and most single reed woodwinds. Played keyboards, I took lessons for like 11 years, and then I just got into playing, and I haven't been playing the last few years. But matter of fact, the last time I actually did a real gig in my own band was like in 2006 or 2007. I've been jamming with a bunch of other people, playing their music, but it's really hard trying to get other people to play something I do, I actually went to a good jam recently, and Fred Chandler from Ojo Dragonfly was there, and there's a couple other guys that were really good, and I remember they were playing like "I'm Your Captain" by Grand Funk Railroad. I just jumped right up and jumped in on that. They were playing songs that most people couldn't play, real classic rock songs, not the one that are routine and have gone through the thing that are called classic rock.
Do you know the band called Stormbringer?
Yeah, I knew Stormbringer. No, all those guys.
They had just yesterday the guitarist from Kansas on playing with them.
Yeah, he used to live in Lakeland. I don't know if he still does or not. He was a spiritual advisor for Neil Morse, who's one of my favorite musicians, who was on the Jam Cruise that I met. Not the Jam Cruise, the Progressive Rock Cruise. Spock's Beard, Transatlantic, and Kerry was his spiritual advisor for a long time. He used to live in Lakeland.
I met Robbie Steinhardt.
He lives in Tampa.
A few times. He lives around. He's actually retired from the band.
Yeah.
He lived right. He probably got more money than he'll ever need to.
There's a lot of those guys live around here. You'd be surprised how many artists live in this area. Quite a few.
I've been told that I've been given a line on try to talk to say Ted Nugent and stuff like that. How feasible would it be to look something up like this?
What do you mean, look it up?
Well, it's got numbers and stuff like that.
I doubt it. If the studio is out of business, they're not going to keep the rate. There should be a log with it. If you have what we used to do in recording back in, God forbid, back in the 70s and 80s when I worked in recording studios. Let me see that right there. I'll show you.
Okay.
They had right here on this part here. Let me turn that on right there. They would put a sticker in, not a sticker. You'd slide the thing in there, and it would tell you, indexing where everything was and basically what it was. And then along with that would come a log. Now, since it's a master, it's not going to have the individual tracks. It's just mastering. Mastering is much different. To me, mastering is its own skill. A lot of people disagree and play it down, but the truth about mastering is it's much different than tracking or engineering, because what you're actually doing is you're leveling out the sound. So what you have on here is the final mix into a 2-track environment. And that 2-track environment has been EQ'd and compressed or whatever they had in those days. I mean, I remember those days. There really wasn't a whole lot of equipment they could do. Matter of fact, it was even in the 50s when Buddy Holly recorded a lot of his stuff, they would actually put a guitar amp up in an attic and stick microphones in there to get the ambience. to do things. They didn't have the effects processors. And I remember a lot of first effects processors. I had one. It was a fuzz face. Jimi Hendrix used it, and so a lot of us wanted one.
I used to have one of those, a fuzz box.
I still have some of my Phase 100, my MXR Phase 100, I think. And then I got Electric Mistress. I still have that. I still have some of my old pedals from the 70s. And I just keep them around, but I'm a pedal. Being a keyboard player, I like programming things, so I can't stand having a bunch of those stupid little pedals there. I'd rather have one unit, and I use the G system as my favorite, and that's what I use now mostly.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking into using a MIDI in my keyboards to bring in different sounds on it, like the guitar sound on the keyboard.
Well, I sample those things. I used to
sample board.
I have a Triton Studio, so what we used to go in there, and I'd walk over to the keyboard and I'd hit the key and push it, and all of a sudden a harmonica solo I'm not supposed to, probably should say this forever, get in trouble, but the harmonica solo for Train Train would come up, and everybody in the bathrooms would come running out looking because it sounds exactly the same, so we just put that on there. And then we'd open up the gig. And since I never really made any money playing music in those days, not worth it. But
it was more for fun then.
Well, that was one of the songs that we attracted a lot of people with because we ended the set with it. I completely rearranged it because the original version's only like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. So I doubled it up, added another whole verse of jamming and guitar solos on the end and stuff to keep people out and going. It was what we ended the set with. And it was a pretty cool song that way. But we would start with that. And then I would create a lot of things that I would record. Instead of just having a keyboard sound like a guitar, I actually play the guitar, and then I would play the guitar and hit on my Triton, and it would actually play that whole phrase. So it wasn't like I was getting an imitation sound; I was actually getting the real sound.
I was having a problem for the longest time with my keyboard, and I finally just said, "F it, I'm gonna fix it." There was the D and the E key; you had to hit it hard to make it work. So I even sought to get a little advice from YouTube, and this kid was showing me how to fix the keyboard. So I broke it open, cleaned up the contacts. Now it works perfect.
I still have the original piano from White Witch that Buddy had given me when I tried to take over. We're going to redo the band, and I remember it had some broken tines on it, and it's funny because for a while I was the keyboard sales at Guitar Center, and I was certified in there, and these kids would come in and say, "Oh, I want a Wurlitzer, or I want this, or Hammond," and I'm going, "Do you have any idea what it takes to move that, much less maintain it? Trust me, go get a synthesizer, forget all about it, because I used to take the Wurlitzer, and what you have to do is they have these little metal tines, and you put solder on it. You put blobs of solder, and then you take it and you file the solder away till it goes in tune. So you take it out, file it down, put it back in. File it down, put it back in, put it back in.
You had to go through all that much trouble?
That much trouble. Wow. And if the tine broke, you had to go get another one, and you had to file. And for a while there, I couldn't even, the last time I found a tine, it was in Atlanta. I mean, I had to go on the internet. Fortunately, thank God for the internet, you can find things like that. And then there used to be a real famous guy in town called Paul Holmes that used to work on our Hammonds. And that was another pain in the ass keyboard. For one thing, it's funny, the history behind a Hammond organ, which most people know is the B3, the famous B3. The B3 was a mistake. It was a nasty sounding keyboard. The churches didn't want it. So the jazz guys ended up with it. And then the funny thing is the guy, Leslie, that made the Leslie speaker, him and Hammond couldn't stand each other, but they were integrated because you couldn't use the Hammond B3 without having the Leslie. It was either 147 or 122 because that's where the amplifier was for the speaker, and you would plug it in with this big cable. I mean, now they got little cables you plug in your computer that can just move tons of information. Back then, the cable was about this big around and a big old plug on the end of it with these big connectors, and you stick it in there, and you could drag it a ways and set up the speaker. And people would swear by them, but to tell you the truth, same thing like everything else. You get one sound out of it, and you got to haul this thing around. It weighs hundreds of pounds, and it was a pain in the butt too.
Well, I used to have a Leslie from the 1940s.
Yeah, most of them were from the 40s or 40s, 50s, or 60s. There were a lot of those around for the longest time. Or most of the organs were made in the 50s and 60s. I think they stopped making them in the 60s. I had a CV from the 50s.
Now, the Hammond you were describing, is that the same one that the Doors used?
No, the Doors used a Farfisa, and he used a Farfisa and I believe a Rhodes. I used to have a Farfisa organ, And he had the double manual one. I had a single manual one.
What's the difference between the two?
Well, two manuals, but they had little buttons on them. There was the Vox. I think it was Vox made one, and Farfisa was the most common one in those days. That a lot of people ended up. You'd see them on TV all the time. They look like little pianos, like electric pianos, but they were actually organs. They had legs on them. But it was funny. I was in a band back in '72, I think, or '71, and a friend of ours had Paul Mayville had an old '57 Chevy, and I had set the keyboard up there for some reason, and it had fallen off the car and hit the ground, and one of the cards got broke. They had each oscillator. I don't know if people understand how this works, but in an organ, there are 12 notes.
Okay.
And each one of them has its own card or oscillator. Mm-hmm. It's the same with an organ, a Hammond, or anything. And then you just tap off of it to get your octaves. So you're 12, 12, 12, 12 until you get up to 88. Usually, nowadays, but back then, what would happen was the card would break. So what happened when the card went out, it would detune. So I had to leave the case off of it and have this organ, which had these rows, look like little cabinets in there with these cards in it. So I knew which card it was. So when the thing would go out of tune, I'd reach around and grab it and pull up on the card and go back in tune again. And everybody would go, wow, he's got a synthesizer, And I'm going, no. But everybody thought it did, because then I grabbed the card after a while and I pull on the cards and go, wow, make all those sounds, because I couldn't afford a $3,000 Mini Moog.
Well, that sounds like you put yourself in the spotlight right there.
It was fun. I mean, those were fun days. We were out, the bands were a lot of fun back then. You'd had gigs. We played 5-6 days a week.
Now the Fisa, was that something that you had to maintain also?
No, they were pretty good. They were pretty durable too. The famous keyboards of those days were the Rhodes and the Wurlitzer, like I got. They're still modeled after all these keyboards from
I used to like the Wurlitzer electric piano. It had
that's what I
nice
have.
Tones.
I had the Wurlitzer electric is what I was talking about, and that's the one that your tines were on. You had to actually fix the tines. You had to wind them down. That's what it is. I still have it.
I was playing some in the 70s in a junior high school band. Orchestra.
All the White Witch albums were used on that keyboard was used on those albums, and they played those, and I played that a long time. I went through a lot. It still got underneath it's white, and sometimes it's covered in. I left the black on. I left it that way because that's the way. Sometimes they would go out and it'd be all white. Sometimes they'd come out and it'd be all black. Mm-hmm. And so they had a covering they put on it that was black, but underneath the whole thing was stripped and then painted white. And I still have it. Unfortunately, I had it in a warehouse, and some water got up and ruined some of the wood. So I don't know if it's going to be actually totally original, but the guts are all still there and still kind of works. I have to replace the capacitors in it to keep it going.
Well, this is the Rocket Man Show. We want to say howdy to everybody. If you have any comments or questions, please call in at what number, Chris?
It's going to be 813-639-8255.
I still keep wanting them to post the number.
2.5 years you should have to do that. It's because you're smoking too much of that stuff on that thing there.
Oh, you mean this is kind of a rare album here. I wanted to show everybody. Can you? There's no way to zoom in on this.
Forget the front, go on the inside right away. So get people's attention. Do it like this. See?
Oh, you mean like?
Yeah,
Cheech and Chong would love this album. Every time I look on the internet, there's 5 or 6 stories about marijuana and medical use. There's this one guy in Washington State that actually got a license to start growing this stuff.
God, I'm so glad this ain't around no more.
So you got it? Okay. Well, let me show the. Well, you see, they saw the other. This is the front side of this album. And the other side is like this. Notice the Glade air freshener on the cover. This is a thing of this is something of things to come for the United States. The states are going to fall like dominoes with the laws that are going to be more lenient towards legalization. What do you think about that?
I don't smoke pot, so I don't care. But other than that, it's fine.
Well, John Morgan is really trying to push it for the medical marijuana in this state. It does have its values, in curing, helping any kind of ailments that you might have. some ailments that you might have. There are actually some things that a liquid from this can cure, and the government doesn't want anybody to have that for some stupid reason. That's why we have dumb people in office.
I got some ideas why, but that's a trade secret.
Oh, well, he'd
Keep that down.
You do not wish to divulge that, huh?
No.
Oh,
Who was
okay.
involved?
Was it like a government experiment?
It was a government experiment.
I heard about a government experiment where they got this super this made a marijuana plant so super potent that some guy smoked it, and he got so high that he never came down. What do you think of that? This is the Rocket Man Show. Thank you for joining us. If you have any comments or questions, give us a call at
813-639-8255.
All right.
The number at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah. We have our very special guest tonight. It's Kurt Wadsworth. And what's new on the rock and roll scene here these days?
I don't know. I don't go out that much. I've been really busy. My girlfriend just had a baby, and it's a long story, but I was really fighting for that, and so I was tied up with that. And I actually took the studio down to put a nursery in, so I just spent we kind of split up. So I spent the last last 3 days in a row just hooking it back up again. So I'm starting up a band. I was trying to get one of my friends here, Paul Coward. I'm going to play with him and some other people.
So you are starting a band now.
Yeah, I think it's time. It's been a while. I was stuck in law for a long time and didn't have a life, and I just got out of that. So now I'm going back into my own businesses, which is good, and I'll have time to go actually play.
So what are you doing for your income now?
I'm still doing some law, but I have other things I've got going on too, some investments and things. But mostly, I'm trying to start up a couple of different businesses that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I couldn't do both because it just takes too much attention. Not
to go back to the marijuana thing, but I've met several people that are investing into marijuana processing businesses.
Yeah.
And they're saying that the payout is exponentially. It can be in the millions of dollars. There's some in California that have these mobile homes full of pot plants, and they're making millions a year off of just that one.
Well, what's going to happen is it's just like anything else. In the old days when smuggling and things like that, the price was up because of the risk. And it was harder to get in. You had to do things, but what the cost was down. And Colombia was cheap.
Wow.
Cost is very cheap there, so you would get it up here and it'd be very exponentially high. But now that they're going to be growing it here, and so many people are going to be growing it, the cost will come way down. They won't make the money they used to make like they think. It'll be overregulated. The people are going to make the money. It's going to be the government and big business.
You brought up a word that made me think of one of the Eagles, the song that one of the Eagles does as a single, "Smuggler's Blues."
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget what his name is. The Eagles was the two Dons, Don Henley and Don Felder.
Steve Earle's song "Copperhead Road" was the one everybody really liked the most back in my day. That was everybody's theme song.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a real smuggler song, more in reality to it. Kind of funny, but being a Florida boy, you kind of see the world a little different than people from other states.
Well, I've been here since '74 in the same place, but it wasn't my first experience with Florida. My first experience with Florida was in '67, I believe, in Daytona. I moved from Chicago to Daytona. What a culture shock that
experience. Oh, yeah. Daytona was cool back then.
Well, I was in a brand new house, brand new school and everything, and it was nice. I even got an invitation to go to Woodstock.
Yeah,
my cousin was going to go.
I went to Woodstock in '94. I have my memorabilia, pulling it out back in the studio. I had my little pole I walked around with some dirt on it, and I got the Coke cans that I drilled out, and I saved all those. And had wood stock on. I saved a bunch of some of the stuff there. We were the condo kings because we got there first, being we're from Florida, and we were right in the front, and we had a 12-man tent. You could see it from the side of the mountain, so they called us the condo kings because we had this condominium, Yeah. People's tents would get destroyed, and if they were hot chicks, they could move in our condo. If they weren't, they were too bad, so you'd go down there. But I was a good time. I really had a blast being there that year.
My cousin invited me to go with her, but my mother put her foot down right there, and then I was only like 8 years old. I had no idea what was
I was 16.
what was Woodstock.
Yeah.
My first experience with rock and roll was with a live band, a band called the Turtles. And they played Happy Together, and I was really happy to be there.
I remember the first time I saw my first rock and roll bands with my mom. My dad's an oral surgeon. My mom, was walking in down underground Atlanta, and I happened to look in, and there were two bands. I saw Jefferson Airplane and Steppenwolf. And I saw these two bands. I'm looking in the bar because you couldn't go in the bar. I said, "Don't look at that." And I couldn't help but look at it. And I said, "This is what I want to do for a living when I get older. This is all I want to do." And ever since then, that's all I wanted to do. And then it was a long time before I actually went to my first real concert. I didn't. I forget who it was. I think it was Humble Pie or somebody like that. It was a long time ago. I forget which one was my actual first one, but they were back in the late '60s. Mm-hmm. I actually met Hendrix once and was sitting at the Men's Garden Club when he showed up, and I thought he sucked. I didn't know who he was, but
I heard that Jimi Hendrix was Buddy Holly's valet.
I don't know. He was. I know he played with Isley Brothers for a long time.
Now,
stifled him down.
When did Buddy Holly start?
Oh, Buddy Holly started in the 50s.
Not in the 40s?
No. Buddy Holly's late 50s.
Oh, late 50s.
Like 55, 56. Well, there was no real rock and roll in the 40s. Rock and roll didn't really begin until, actually, the real main person was Bill Haley and the Comets. It was like the mid 50s when it really started.
Rock around the clock. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because the rock and roll, the blues was more of the black community, Southern black community, but the funk, started a lot with white people, and then it became a Motown thing. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of funny. The only all-white band that actually on the Motown record was Rare Earth, who was from there and had some connections.
That,
they were great musicians, but some of those guys in the Motown stuff, matter of fact, I just recorded something from that. And it's kind of interesting, the history, how it's switched around and how the communities changed and everything. And it came from up north. Funk came from up north, and in the South was, we had our own variety of music, which is where I'm from. So it was different.
So you're from up north?
From here. My family goes way back here.
Well, I'm born and raised in Chicago myself. I'm what people might refer to as a transplant here.
Yeah, a lot of my great-great-grandparents fought in the Civil War for Florida, so that's how far back. We go even before that.
Wow, that's way back, man.
My great-great-grandfather surrendered the troops at Appomattox Courthouse for Florida, actually.
Last time there was a war on American soil.
Yeah. So
actually, if you can't back then, it wasn't Hawaii wasn't a state. That was until 1959.
A lot of people don't know this, but the first shots fired in anger in the Civil War were actually fired in Pensacola Bay. In the middle of the night, the Union troops went and abandoned 2 forts and went to 1 fort. Mm-hmm. And when the Southerners found out about it, they fired on them. So people think it was Fort Sumter, but in reality, it all started in Florida.
Wow.
Florida was one of the first to succeed.
But most of the fighting wasn't in Florida, though, was it?
No. Naval, but not too much everything else.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Nobody wanted anything down here. There wasn't anything down here in those days, really.
Well, I hope that everybody has learned something from the wars in the past, or even from our show today. That things can happen with, and you never know how they get started, but or how it's going to finish, but eventually it does. Oh, I'm being coerced into saying, this is the Rocket Man Show. We want to thank you all for joining us and having Kurt Wadsworth as my special guest for this evening. And be sure and tune in for us next Monday from 9 till 10. This is the Rocket Man saying good night.
Good night.
You've been watching the Rocket Man Show. on Talk One Network in Tampa, Florida.